Okay, chapter 5, we're going to start covering the rise of the River Valley civilizations. So the question that you'll have on your test, your short answers, will be what was the Neolithic Revolution, what factors led to the rise of the first civilizations, and what were the accomplishments of the early River Valley civilization. So once you see the accomplishments, this is going to be for every chapter. Kind of pay attention because that'll definitely be one of your short answer questions. So these are the 4 areas we're talking about: Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus River Valley, or the Indus and the Ganges, and then the Yellow River. So here are your terms, and you'll have a Quizlet that you can review because on every section and on your final exam for the week, you'll have all of these terms on there. Some will be, what we'll do is we'll put a small amount for each section, but then all of them will be on your test. So part 1, Rise of River Valley Civilizations, Introduction into River Valley Civilizations. So the earliest civilizations were theocracies and monarchies. So that was kind of the easiest way to rule. So in a theocracy, religious leaders govern. In a monarchy, it's what did you have as a hereditary ruler, heads of government. Hereditary means being passed down through the family. So Judaism, this is the religion of the ancient Hebrews, and this was the first religion to worship only one God. So they were monotheistic. Anthropologists study the origins and customs and beliefs of mankind or humankind. Most anthropologists now believe that the Great Rift Valley in East Africa was the birthplace of humans or of mankind. So many scientists believe that human beings as we know them today, which are Homo sapiens, first appeared sometime around 400,000 to 200,000 years ago during the Ice Age. And here is the East Africa area that we're talking about here. And this is the Great Rift Valley. So you have humans migrating out of the East Africa, Great Rift Valley, and really once they discovered fire, they were able to go into these cold areas. And then North America, South America, these areas are kind of the last places to be that they migrated to. So human beings had several important advantages over other animals. They had superior intellect, they were able to use their hands to make tools, and the ability to communicate through speech. Because human beings had these ways of communicating, remembering, and making things, they were able to pass on what they had learned and their way of doing things from one generation to the next. This way, the first human cultures developed. So they just developed and got more sophisticated as they went on. So culture refers to a people's way of life. Culture includes things such as language, types of clothing, types of homes, family organization, systems of government, and methods of obtaining food, which is really economy eventually. And culture also includes people's crafts, arts, music, and religious beliefs. So people in the earliest human societies were hunters and gatherers. They did not know how to grow their own food. Instead, they relied on hunting, fishing, and gathering wild plants for their food. So they learned to make fires, to make spears with pieces of bone and stone, and to make canoes and boats out of logs. Because these people made tools of stone, historians refer to these early societies as the Stone Age cultures. Over thousands of years, Stone Age people also learned to make clay pottery and domesticate or to tame dogs. Early humans spent most of their time hunting for food. They migrated to areas where foods like nuts, berries, fruits, grains, and especially herds of wild animals could be found, and they were in abundance and things like that. So during the Ice Age, people migrated out of Africa to other parts of the world. Eventually, people even migrated to the Americas and Australia, which I showed you on the map. So wherever people went, they showed great ingenuity in adapting to their local conditions. So here again are the different river valley civilizations: Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus River Valley, and then the Yellow River in China. And here's a little bit better area, or a little bit better map of how much they actually settled in those areas. And if you can notice, they're all pretty much right in the same climate regions. You're going to have a mild climate in those areas, and of course they're all on rivers. And some of the different things that they did, you had you had people build the different types of pyramids, step pyramids, or your pyramids that you had in Egypt. The rivers were natural highways. Okay, so it was easy to transport and move up and down the rivers. And then once people started to settle, they started to come up with art, different all the different institutions that we have now. And then the big thing was irrigation. So taking the water from the river and moving it out to the crops. So about 10,000 years ago, one of the great turning points in history occurred. People began to change from hunters and gatherers to producers of food. Two important developments brought about this change. People learned how to grow food and how to herd animals. So anthropologists believe that the change first occurred in parts of the Middle East, which to us doesn't make a lot of sense because a lot of the Middle East is desert climate. But along the rivers, you actually had places where you could grow wild wheat, barley, and things like that. So people noticed that they could spread seeds of these grains to plant and grow their own crops. They also learned how to herd farm animals such as goats, sheep, and cattle. These advances were now referred to the Neolithic Revolution. Okay, so that was one of your short answers. What's the Neolithic Revolution? So wherever agriculture was introduced, people no longer had to wander in search of food. Instead, they could build permanent homes and villages and establish a fixed way of life. So populations grew, although the emergence of agricultural societies are believed to have first occurred in Southwest Asia. Strange thing is it kind of just spread to all these different areas, all the different four river valleys almost at the same time. Then eventually it goes into Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Americas. So early tools that were used during the Neolithic Revolution. Okay, so this is this is a sickle or scythe, and it's actually going to cut the wheat. And here's to grind the millet or the whatever different types of grains that you have to turn it into bread. So the emergence of social classes. So once they had time to settle and not everybody had to go out and hunt and gather, you actually have different jobs develop. So the Neolithic Revolution brought both benefits and problems. People could grow more food than they had been able to gather and hunt. So, but they were also more vulnerable to attack by other people. So you had people who started to settle together. You had villages, and those were kind of easy targets for your people who were still hunting and gathering. So it brought about changes in economics. And economics, this is just the definition, is how people meet their needs for food and shelter, led to a lot of different social and political changes. So how people lived and how they were actually ruled. So the introduction of agriculture and settlements led to the emergence of new social classes. And the first two are going to be warriors and priests. So to protect the village from these non-farmers, they had to come up with the warrior class, and the warrior class was there to protect the village. And then the priesthood actually would do all the religious rituals, and they would promote a good harvest, and they would also protect the village from danger, from asking for help from the different or many gods that they had. So the rise of the River Valley civilizations, as agricultural societies developed and grew, their way of life further changed. Around 3,500 BC, the first civilization started. So a civilization is a form of human culture in which some people live in cities, have complex social institutions, and they start to develop writing and are skilled enough to start what they would consider back then science and technology, different from ours today. So the first civilizations developed in 4 separate river valleys. Each of these river valleys offered mild climates, like I showed you on the map, and water highways that can move from one place, so they can move from one place to another. The water was also used for drinking and for cooking food. Each of these valleys was also a floodplain, and a floodplain we think of as a bad thing, but it's actually good because it would bring in fertile soil, deposit fertile soil every year. So the rich soil led to abundant harvests of food and surpluses. And sometime between 5,000 and 6,000 years ago, the first river valley civilizations developed in Mesopotamia. So Mesopotamia is where it's going to start. And the region is located between the Tigris and Euphrates River, which is in Iraq today. So Mesopotamia is simply a Greek word meaning the land between two rivers.